Today we are going to learn about the techniques of a top-performing SDR at Forth, John Ciannello. John started as an SDR 6 months ago, and he averaged 130% of his fully ramped quota. In his second month of onboarding, he achieved 500%. Welcome to the SDR Game, the podcast created to accelerate your sales career and help you build more pipeline. In this episode, you will discover the strategies of a successful SDR in the restaurant industry, prospecting current customers and prospects, the signals John uses to reach out to his accounts, strategies for engaging an industry that is not very active on LinkedIn. Let's get started. So John, could you walk us through your journey from onboarding to achieving 500% of your quota in just your second month? What specific action did you take during this period?
First of all, Eric, thanks for having me on. Super excited to be here. I started at Forth that was in November, did that in December, and I kind of was just eating up all the content internally and trying to understand our product, how we market, who we focus on. I had an idea, but I really was just trying to eat that up and understand it really well. And then kind of just was super determined to I want to go out there and get some meetings as early as possible. I want to dial, I want to get the emails out there. So that 500%, obviously, you see a lot of SDRs, especially somebody who happens to be successful at first, they have a super high number at first. A lot of times it's because you're ramping, right? So I had no quota essentially, but I booked a bunch of meetings. So it looks cool at first. So super, super cool. I just kind of hit the phones hard, listened to the reps that were booking meetings frequently, both AEs and SDRs, and kind of just took a talk track from what they were doing and turned it into something that made sense for my tone, my approach, how I communicate. So yeah, that's really basically what I did, was just go listen to the top reps. Okay, that works. And then find out who they're calling. And then once I got a groove going, with one or two, I just kind of dug into the same list. So at that time it was new restaurant openings. So any new restaurants that were opened, we would get a list of those as SDRs. We would get those over from marketing. And I would just call through that list. Basically, it was kind of, hey, I was looking for Elric. This is Elric. Hey, this is John calling you from over at Forth. I'm totally calling. Actually, hey, I know I'm totally calling you out of the blue, so I'll be very quick. My name's John. I'm calling you from Forth. We're a restaurant-focused payroll company, but we own Hot Schedules. You might know us. You might know Hot Schedules, so that's why I mentioned it. Reason I'm calling you today is actually because I noticed you guys were opening a new restaurant. Wanted to see how it was going and just kind of talk about how you were currently handling scheduling. At Forth, we also do payroll. That a heavy focus on the phone would be payroll and applicant tracking. So you could substitute scheduling with payroll, substitute with applicant tracking. It's a pretty good generic talk track. That's a very basic trigger, the new restaurant opening. It's kind of it's not super granular, somebody like Will Falkenborg, who he's calling into, he finds really specific things that make sense. Saw you guys were doing this, or also this person. So it's a little bit different that way. It works, definitely translates, but this is a more generic one, which might apply across the board to different industries. I think really good in the restaurant industry because they're kind of as we mentioned about before, the LinkedIn stuff, it's hard to find the specific pain points. It's definitely possible, but it's good to sometimes just have a nice generic foot in the door.
Okay, so 2 questions on your talk track. So you are mentioning about hot schedule actually. So I'm not familiar with the restaurant industry, so here it's me asking question about why are you saying hot schedule specifically? Is hot schedule super famous in the industry, so that's why you are bringing that, or what's the reason behind this question?
I think it's over 60%. It might even be close to 70% of restaurants in the United States that are using a scheduling system are using hot schedules. But we're also, I think we have 100,000 customers worldwide. It's a big company. So I mentioned hot schedules because it's a good familiarity piece. For instance, Cheesecake Factory has used us for probably 20 years. I mean, that's one of our early ones, way before I was ever involved at Forth. So it's a good, if somebody worked at Cheesecake Factory and now they work at a different restaurant, they would know hot schedules. So it's a good, it's kind of the difference between working at a startup versus working at a huge company. So if you're at Zoom Info and you call into a sales org and you're yeah, it's John from Zoom Info, everybody knows who Zoom Info is. So it's kind of they know what you're talking about versus, hey, it's John from, I don't even know, small startup. People are where? So yeah, it's kind of why I would drop the familiarity piece there.
And you were mentioning about the signal you're using earlier about the opening of a new restaurant. Why do you think the opening of a new restaurant, it's a trigger for you to reach out. So how do you leverage that when you reach out to them?
The new restaurant being opened, there's actually a lot of avenues you can go from there. So basically, if you're opening a new restaurant, you're gonna have to hire people there, and they're definitely going to be hiring soon. Let's say they just opened or they're 3 months from opening. You're gonna want your payroll system set up because that's always a hard thing to get going. Any industry is like you just want to make sure, like especially like when you're dealing with people getting paid, you want to make sure it's solid, you trust it. They're already thinking about that. Applicant tracking, which is like another big one for us, like you want that set up because you want to be able to know how you're going to get your applicants in. You want to know where you're going to put your job listings. So they're going to be doing that at that time. And then scheduling. Once you start scheduling people, you want to know what you're using to do it. One of the key things we focus on is like you want to leverage that scheduling in order to help you save money, make sure you're being efficient with your schedules.
So when we were preparing the episode, you mentioned that you reach out to customers and prospects. So in this case, do you call only prospects or also customers?
From the SDR side, for an NRO, so a new restaurant opening, a lot of times that would be focused on a prospect, because our customer success team actually handles a lot of the NRO work. It does sort of work but it's mostly just prospects. Yeah.
If Hosker is super famous in the space and has been in the space for 20 years, when you call a new restaurant, do you know if they use like the tool used by the headquarters? I'm curious to understand how do they operate when they launch a new restaurant. Do they use the solution of the group, or are they open to use something else?
Yeah, it always depends on the way the company is structured. So if it's a few locations, smaller place, then they make their decision usually probably for the group. If it's just one location, they make all the decisions there. Sometimes in a franchise scenario, even if it's only one location, the corporate like tells them what to use. It's less common, but they have like preferred partners and stuff. But it's always good it depends on where you're calling. If you're calling into the corporate office, it's always good because you can then kind of chat with like, hey, like what are you guys doing across the board to leverage these tools and this data to make sure to get an understanding of how you're doing across all your locations. So yeah, it does depend on the place. There's a mixture. Like there's all kinds of combos of franchise. The corporate tells us what to use. Corporate gives us everything to use. Corporate doesn't care what we do, or we're a small business. We don't have corporate. Like it's just us. We kind of use whatever we want. It's just a couple locations. It's kind of like there's a lot of different setups across the board.
And what do you think it's the best way to figure out that? Do you call the restaurant or do you call corporate?
The restaurant, believe it or not. So this is like, sales 101, like working around gatekeepers, and talking to a gatekeeper. Well, restaurants, you end up talking to tons of gatekeepers because you're literally calling a hostess stand sometimes. But I actually think it's a lot of times it depends on your goal for that. If you just want to do fact finding call, like figure out what they're doing, it might be better to call the restaurant and just talk to like a general, like get a gatekeeper. They might even tell you, or be like, I actually was looking to connect with the manager. I had a question about what you guys are doing for employee scheduling. A lot of times they'll be like, oh, like, what is it again? Like, I just had a quick question for them. Or yeah, I have to speak with them to ask them this. Or you might just get the general manager on and be like, hey, look, like I know you guys are probably operating at the corporate level, but I was curious. I wanted to know, is that the case? Or do you make your tool decisions? Like, do you pick what you use for scheduling? That's a good way to find out, because then corporate, like a lot of times they're harder to get in touch with. As we all know, but if you can get because then you can go to corporate, like let's say we're at a big group. I talked to the GM at one location in a 10 location group. Well, then I can go to the VP of operations and be like, hey, I actually spoke with Elric, one of your GMs. I found out, you guys make the decisions at corporate. So I wanted to, just come straight to you. I think, blah, 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 blah. Like, I think it would make a ton of sense for us to connect on this because of this. That it gives you some context for when you talk to the decision maker. Something that you are talking about, Will, actually. So Will, I forgot to mention that Will recommended you to be on the show today. So thank you, Will, for the recommendation. Actually, he told me that something that why he wanted to have you on the show, and he mentioned that you booked. Yeah, you got like a 400K in pipeline just via texting. So could you share with me what's your process with texting? Because I know texting can be used in different ways, but I'm curious to see what did you use. No, I'm happy to share. I by no means am like the texting outbound expert. I don't even have anything crazy. I more so just use it. Like if I were to call you, and you didn't answer, I wouldn't probably leave you a voicemail. I'd probably text you. So I kind of use it that way because a lot of the times, like, I think people can get caught up with like thinking about sales and like they like make it this weird thing that doesn't have to be, in the sense of like trying to be businessy. Like sometimes like you're just talking to people, like just be normal, like just be respectful and kind, and like make sure you're not like crossing boundaries, but also be normal, like meet them where they're at. Like if you called your friend, like you probably most of us wouldn't leave a voicemail. We'd leave a text. So basically like that was a huge thing, was just like, if this one person, like I called and their answering machine said, I'm probably not going to listen to my voicemail. So if you need me, shoot me a text. So I was like, all right, I'm going to shoot a text like, hey, so-and-so, it's John from Hot Schedules. I actually just wanted to touch base to see if we could set some time aside to take a look at your account. Wanted to introduce you to your new rep, so-and-so. Was wondering if you had some time, maybe tomorrow afternoon. Very simple. Like, it's pretty human, kind of like if your friend missed your call and you're like if you called me and I didn't answer, you'd be like, hey, John, I actually just wanted to touch base to make sure we had a good time set aside for the podcast. Like, you probably wouldn't leave me a voicemail. Maybe you would, but probably not. And then the text, I'm going to be able to answer more quickly.
Okay, and so do you wait for the permission of, because here on this example you were mentioning, the prospect was saying, hey, text me, but if someone don't say that on the recording of the voicemail, do you still text them, or you just did this with this one?
Yeah, you totally can. Sometimes it's like you have to see how you feel. Like with a current customer, I'm totally fine with that because it's somebody who like has a context for who we are. I'm a little bit hesitant with net new prospects because they don't know who I am. Like, I don't want to annoy them. I don't want them to flag the number as a spam text. You know, I don't know any of the guidelines or laws, but I know like it can be like tricky, like depending. I mean, if you're in Europe, I'm pretty sure in Europe it's really strict. In the US, it can be state to state, or it's getting stricter. I don't know. I mean, you may know more about that actually.
Yeah, for texting, I know. Yeah, Europe it's tough, so don't recommend that. But I think the way you are saying it, with prospects, cold prospect, I don't think you will do that. But with customer, definitely, if they're already customers, it's easier to have, I would say, the permission of doing it. So, and actually, because we're talking about customers versus prospects, when we're preparing the episode, also you mentioned that you can prospect both because your comp plan allow you that to do it. And I know it's not super common most of the time. So how do you approach customer versus new prospects? Or do you, I don't know, during the week, do you do like 50% of your week on customers and then 50% of your week on prospects? Or what's your process on this?
Whatever initiative we're kind of working on together as a team. Jack's my manager. So like whatever Jack, like where he's leading us, guiding us, he gives us a lot of free rein to kind of like figure out where we're best seeing things. But I would try to split it. Unless one was going really well, then I would just I would go all in for a while. But yeah, 50-50 is probably like, if I was going to recommend it going forward, I would do 50-50, like split it between, okay, like here's the net new. And then even that I would actually do 50, 25, 25, 50. So the 50 being current customer, 25 being strategic accounts, like accounts that you want to like map. And so like you're going to call a just one location out of a 50 location group to find out what they're doing for scheduling and if it's a corporate or local or store decision. And then you're going to work up the chain. Like, okay, from there, you're going to call one other, and then you're going to try to call the VP of ops, talk to the VP of ops, see if if there's anything there, and then see work the chain there. That would be like, I would try to focus 20% of my time on that because it's good for your company because you're going to build specific skills that make or you're going to bring in specific business that like there's relevant, it's going to price be a faster deal. Or there's going to be a lot there, like a meatier deal, but it also helps you with your, like your sales skills. Like you're actually going to be developing things as an SDR then that you can use if you want to go the AE route. Like most SDRs want to be an AE. You're going to do things and it's going to help you be an AE. Now, I've never been an AE, so I'm saying that from the perspective of an SDR, but it's going to help you be better about understanding deals. And then the other 25, just like, I love this. If you're able to do this at your company, this is absolutely a great thing to do. Really good for success, really good for just getting practice, like against, like being good on the phones, it's less objections. So it's good for like, okay, like I'm going to be positive. Like these are good calls. Like it's account reviews. I don't think I invented it, but I definitely kind of started it for myself. I would find like, I would make sure I coordinated with my AEs, but I would have a list of current customers. And as long as my AE was good with like this approach, I'd say like the call would be like, hey, I was looking for Joe. My name's John. I work in your guys' hot schedules account. Pause there. They'd be like, oh, okay. Because they know hot schedules, they're a current customer. They know why I'm calling. And then very simply like, look, the reason I'm bothering you in the middle of the day is actually because my partner Tom and I were calling around the region. He's new to the territory. We're setting up some calls to review our accounts, make sure we're serving everybody as best as possible. I wanted to see if you had some availability tomorrow afternoon to meet with Tom on a Microsoft Teams call for maybe 15, 20 minutes to take a look and make sure we're serving you as best as possible and see if there's any other areas that we could be helping you. That's a rough track of the account review approach. It's good if your company lets you do it. I mean, I know sometimes like the outbound approach is all net new, don't want you doing anything like that. And I get that. But the approach, what's good about that is like at Fourth, like I said, like we're doing scheduling, we're doing applicant tracking, we're doing payroll. Like if somebody's just working with us for scheduling, well, then it's going to be easier to build context for payroll. So then it's kind of like, in a way, it's net new because they're a different product. It's a different product. So like I think that's how Fourth can justify it. It's not like I'm like, hey, I want you to renew your hot schedule. It's like it's different. So it's super cool. And then the other 50% is just net new, kind of like NROs.
I was going to say, you said you can choose whatever you want, so you can do a week like you and just focus on customers, and then the next week you can do new prospects.
Yeah, I would say definitely I'm probably heavy towards. It depends, like it said, it depends on the initiative and like Jack's guidance. But yeah, it's pretty much. I mean, shout out to Jack. He's super communicative and he's a great leader. So it's as long as like I'm like communicating with him, like, hey, here's what I'm thinking, and I'm bringing results. As long as there's results and you're communicating in my situation, I can kind of be creative. Like if I'm having a lot of success with current customer and it's going well, nobody's going to say like, hey, you need to stop doing that. If I'm having success with prospects and they're net new and it's going well, nobody's going to be like, hey, you need to be calling current customers. It's kind of like, just be successful, communicate and you'll be good. I would say in most decent situations, I don't know if you've had different experiences, which I definitely have seen, but like in most decent situations, as long as you're communicating, you do yourself a huge favor, because even if you don't have a great manager, at least you could say like, hey, like I'm trying to communicate, and so that's a bit of a tangent thought, but it's kind of like the idea of just being over communicative there.
Yeah. Okay. So I have experience with prospecting customers, but we were separating the new business versus expansion. So we're like an SDR dedicated to new business and then another one for expansion. So it was not like one or the other, but it was pretty new. So, and I know bigger SDR teams, generally they have like this motion, but generally when you have like a small team of SDRs, you don't focus on customers. Generally it's the account manager, the account management team, or the AE or the CSM team was in charge of expansion. So that's what I'm seeing most of the time. If you go back to what you were saying earlier about the triggers you're using, so you are using the restaurant opening, for example. So you are using this because your prospects are not super active on LinkedIn. So what other triggers do you use for your accounts?
I like currently hiring. So currently hiring is kind of almost adjacent to new restaurant opening, because there's changes going on at the restaurant. They have listings on the site, or maybe they opened a new one, or maybe they're growing. Like they added an addition to the building and they're hiring 10 more servers and more staff. The reason it's a good trigger for, really anybody, but in the restaurant space, is because our products speak directly to that problem. So like we have an applicant tracking system that can help you streamline your whole process of hiring. So like from hire to like from beginning to end, you can decrease the time it takes to get it done. The onboarding process, we have a direct to interview thing. So it's kind of like, it speaks directly to that. Scheduling as well, payroll as well, kind of those ones more obviously. So that's a good trigger. I also like job changers. We use that here. So like somebody that, well, sort of recent job changers are good, but also we like specifically somebody that used to work at was a past customer of ours at a different company. That's with the new account. I mean, that's like exactly, we've mentioned Will a couple of times, but that's exactly what they do is with Jamplify, right? So um, that's another good one. I try to keep it pretty basic for myself here, just because there's a lot of restaurants to reach out to. So I try not to get too granular. I'm always open to new ideas, but those are like some of the basic ones. I mean, I could try to think of some others, but I think honestly, like those are always pretty solid. Is like job changers, currently hiring, past customers, new restaurant openings.
Are you looking for specific roles? You are talking about, for example, roles that would be they would be hiring at the restaurant, but anything else?
Usually for anything hourly. Like if it's like the hostesses, bartenders, busboys, food runners, probably like we're not solving for, in that case, we're not solving for like any management roles. It's not impossible because our solution does serve problems that managers have because they're the like they're the end, in some ways they're the end user, and it's not as they're the decision maker, so it helps. But usually the trigger is, I always like to check like company head growth as well, so like headcount growth. So like if it's anywhere from 25 to 100% growth within the last year, it's like that's a good signal that they're oh, another one that's good, kind of separate note, but like LinkedIn Sales Navigator has a cool feature. Oh, category interest. Yeah, category. I like category interest. So like you can go ahead and put in there like payroll software. And then if they're looking into payroll software based on LinkedIn Sales Navigator's data, and they're in the industry, the persona that I call into or I target, then it's a good indicator that I should talk to them and try to say like, hey, like, maybe I don't know if I would say like, hey, I saw you were looking at this, but I would be like, hey, I actually was calling about this. We've been working with other restaurants or other groups similar to you. Was actually wondering if you was wondering what you were doing currently, seeing if now is a good time to connect or something along those lines. Yeah, so those are some good triggers there.
Yeah, so you're trying to focusing on a few triggers so you can spend time on that instead of looking for, because like you said, I've been also working in an industry where people are not active on LinkedIn, so it's a waste of time to checking the profile of the person, for example. So I understand that. Now, if you don't have any triggers, for example, because you mentioned hiring, new opening, job changes, headcount growth, or an intent category interest on sales nav. So what do you do if you have like any triggers? Do you do you still try contact them? Or what's your approach?
There's different sales philosophies, right? I mean, I understand the idea of being more strategic and like only doing like trigger-based outreach or relevant outreach. But sometimes, like as an SDR, this is my opinion, and maybe it's a hot take, but I think you don't get to be. I think you could still be strategic with the balance, but it's not the same as being an AE where like you have you're carrying a quota over a quarter, and you can like be like you have a monthly quota. You need to get meetings. Like most situations, like you gotta go out there and just dial, like hit the phones. Other SDRs do heavy email, heavy LinkedIn, like totally fine. Do whatever works. There is no silver bullet in sales. If something's working, let it work until it doesn't. Like keep rocking that. But I think, yeah, just call. Like just get out there and call lists. So in this space, it makes a ton of sense just to go call. Like get a good list of contacts or accounts and just call through and see if you just learn something. Like, hey, like who'd you hear? Like the last 10 calls, last 10 conversations, like, and you ask the same question you wanted to ask, like, hey, I was curious how you guys were currently solving for employee scheduling, and what brand was mentioned the most, what company are they using, like that type of stuff. But also I just think it's worth it to just call, because you can get meetings out of that. If you do a little bit of research and understand your competitors and you hear what competitor they're using, you could say like, oh, cool. Like we actually had a customer that was working with them. They switched to us because they were able to use us to do XYZ, and it just wasn't a fit with the other company. So if that's something you guys are looking at, it might make sense for us to actually set up a 15, 20 minute apples to apples meeting maybe tomorrow afternoon. Like, so it's definitely worth it just to call, because it's kind of similar to what you said. if they're not active on LinkedIn, there's other ways, I guess, to understand relevance, but most sellers leverage LinkedIn. And if you can't understand the current state from LinkedIn, you're going to end up probably getting stuck in like paralysis by analysis. Like you're going to be reading and just over researching, and you're not even going to make your dials.
So you're talking a lot about dials. I know we said LinkedIn, and it's not like maybe the best channel. So do you just use a phone, or do you use emails also with your sons? Or what's your main channel?
We run both. Like, so I don't do a ton of LinkedIn, like we said. I've done a few messages on there. Not really had a lot of success. I think it's just because this industry is not active there. But the phone is probably, I mean, that's definitely where as a team, the team of like our SDR team, we book most of our meetings on the phone. But phone and email, actually, believe it or not, current customers actually, it's good. Email is good for current customer because there's just some familiarity there. In this space, I know people that run really good email campaigns in other industries. Even some here too. I think mostly phone. It's kind of like speed to lead. Like if you can get into a conversation, and this is like a hot take, right? But I think the phone is the best way to go. If you're doing pure outbound, just talk to people, like make it human to human. I know like there's like the idea like cold calling is annoying or cold calling is dead. Like it's really not. People are doing really well on the phones. People are really getting out there and crushing it on the phones in a respectful way, in a fun way. A lot of people are like having a lot of fun, doing a lot of fun stuff with the phones. So phones, definitely heavy phones. I'm a big fan of the phones. I think it's the best way to get good at it. Like being a good copywriter is super good skill. I think everybody should work on that if they feel led to. But being able to communicate on the phone, that's a skill that translates for years. Like everybody I talk to in that, like professionally, like that talks about their career, or talks about my career and somebody else's career, to be like, man, like that's such a great skill to develop. That's going to really help you down the line when you're doing X or with whatever you're doing. So yeah, I'm heavy phones, and I definitely think it's important for SDRs to be using the phones.
You said heavy on the phone. How many calls do you make per day?
50 a day. So like somebody else is going to hear this and be like, that's not heavy. Like I do hundreds. Now that's with a 1x1 dialer. With a power dialer, I would say, probably 100 or so. 100 or so has been what I've done. That's like what I would recommend. I think this comes back to that piece where I mentioned about being balanced. This is another, like, my opinion, no silver bullet. Some people disagree, some people agree. I'm not one for like just go through a random list and call, because I want to know why I'm calling the list. I don't need to know why I'm calling every person on the list, but I do want to know, okay, this whole list is a currently hiring list. So I know that's why I'm calling. And then that way there's some strategy there. But also I think it's good to just like take pauses and take inventory. Okay, I've done 100 dials and I haven't gotten a meeting. Well, maybe I need to switch to a different list, or maybe I need to change my approach. So that's where I say heavy, but have a heavy split. I don't necessarily think you need to do 1 million dials, but that's just my opinion. I think it's good to know why you're calling, and then also to be concerned with like success and results. Hey, like if you're bringing in the meetings that you're supposed to bring in, well, then what you're doing is working, and that's fine. Like it depends on your company, but in my opinion is, hey, like if you wanted me to book 5 meetings this week, and you also wanted me to do 250 dials, let's say, but the point was for me to book 5 meetings, well then, hey, I booked 5 meetings and I did it in 150 dials, and that's fine. Like it's not like at least in my situation, like Jack's never been like, hey, like you also need to do 100 more dials. Because sometimes I was spending more time researching, which took up the time that I would have used to dial more. So it's definitely about balance, in my opinion. But again, that's a heavily debated topic, as you know.
Yeah, but it sounds like so even it's like you said, just 50 calls, and that some people can say, oh, that's not heavy, but you are preparing a lot what you are doing. So it's not like just 50 random calls. You have a list of, if it's like 50 companies hiring, for example, that's the list, but you are preparing this. And I think with calls, even with the rest, it's a lot about preparation and focusing on the right accounts, because yes, maybe you said earlier, maybe even you don't have a trigger, you still reach out to. My experience with reps generally, most of the time, when they are more strategic with their list, they have more success. And it's not because they are looking for every triggers, but you are spending the time you're preparing to focus on the right accounts. And because you are focusing on the right accounts, that's why you are more successful than someone who is not as much, maybe spending too much time on preparation. Because sometimes I've seen reps, they have a list of 400 accounts and they just go through A to Z as a list, and they don't use any triggers. And I think that's a waste of time. For example, to do it this way, and even though for you, it's not like, I would say, the way, like you were saying earlier, okay, if you don't book any meetings, you said that you did maybe something wrong, you are going to try something different. And I think doing this way is the right approach, because you are going to try to focus on booking meetings, not just doing the dice for doing doing your dice.
I think that's spot on. It's just the balance. Like, it's also, it depends on where you're at in your career. Like, it's good to do a lot more quantity at first, just to get practice and being comfortable talking to people randomly. But it's hard work. This concept of hard work isn't everything. Hard work is important, but you want to also be doing good work. Like, at the end of the day, it's about results. It's really good to work hard, but also if you're getting results, good. Because at the end of the day, like, the person who's getting the results is finishing in the same spot as you, even though you did double the amount of work. And that's just kind of how the game goes. So you want to be able to balance that and not overexert yourself.
Yeah, and if you go back to what you're saying exactly when you are starting as a rep, a new SDR, for example, I completely agree with you on focusing on activities more than just the list, for example, because at the beginning you want to build the reps, not just the quality of it, because you need to build the muscle first to perform. And like you were saying, if we talk about you listening to top performers, yes, you can listen to top performers, you can use what they are using, but even though to match their conversion rates and their success rates, it's going to take you time. And unfortunately, you need to do more activities if you want to match their results. Okay, so we are already at the end of the interview, John, but I have one last question for you. So what advice would you give to someone just starting out as an SDR, and what are the key practices they should adopt from day one?
The first thing I would actually, this is the first thing I would say, the biggest thing. You don't deserve your job, and that's a really good thing. And that goes across the board to everybody, but I would specifically say it to an SDR because it's a really hard job. Like, I love it, but it's hard. It's hard work, a lot of dialing, a lot of emailing, a lot of rejection, but you're going to get paid really well. You're going to get to influence your income really heavily. It's a blessing to have a job. A lot of people don't have a job, right? It's a blessing to have income. A lot of people don't have income. So the reason I say you don't deserve your job, it makes me sound like a jerk, but really what I'm saying is, don't fall for the trap of entitlement. Like, you have a really cool chance to build something special, like whether that's in tech or in sales, like long-term in tech sales or not, but you're at a really good starting block. You're going to make really good money in an entry-level role. Hopefully you have good people around you at your organization, but if not, like, get plugged into LinkedIn. That's the next piece. So the first piece is, don't fall for the entitlement, be grateful because it helps you be more positive, but also then get plugged into a network on LinkedIn. Like, there's tons of SDRs on LinkedIn. I met Elric on LinkedIn. Like, it's so good to be connected with, because there's a whole world of people that, like, are giving out free advice. I've watched people, I've myself, like, seen advice on LinkedIn and then used it to have success. Or somebody like Jack, who hires SDRs, he posts stuff all the time about, hey, here's how to land an SDR job. Like, this will help you land a job. That's out there. Like, get plugged into that. Like, those are like some good things. But if you've gotten a job, right, you're in the SDR role, just commit to getting better every day. And if you, like, block out, protect your calendar, and own your outbound. Those are the two things I would leave with. Protect your calendar and own your outbound. So block out your times for your dialing or your outreach or your prospecting. Don't go to internal meetings. If your company doesn't make you, don't go. Like, just focus on your outbound. And just own it. Like, be like, hey, like, this is my calendar. This is my outbound. This is, like, I'm going to build my sales career. And I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to get good. I'm going to treat it like a sport. Like, I'm going to get better every day. That's a bunch of stuff. I hope that was understandable enough, but that's, like, kind of like general advice I would leave on somebody just starting right now. because it's such a great job to start out with and to kind of like build something off of.
Just to go back on your first tip, basically, I completely agree with you on that. We're lucky to be in Texas because we can really forget really quickly that salaries are higher than other industries, and also if you compare sales to other maybe jobs on the market, it's quicker so to see the result than maybe other roles. So the textile industry in general, it's a pretty good industry. Obviously, if I had to have a better rep, so I think that was a great one.
Cool. Thanks, Elric. Appreciate it.
So, John, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate it. You taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing.
And for everyone listening to this episode, I see you on the next one. Thanks. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So for Spotify, to leave a review, what you can do is you can use your phone, then go on the Spotify app, then you go to the SDR game page, and then at the top of the page, you can leave a review. It's a 5-star review if you enjoyed the episode, obviously. And then if you are listening to this episode on Apple Podcasts, feel free also to leave a review on your app. Thanks for listening, and I see you on the next episode.